very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I am absolutely delighted to be back home in Florida. I became a Florida resident a couple of years ago. When I retired, I was looking to escape the People's Republic of Maryland, and I was just sort of scoured the whole country to see where would be the best place to move. And, Florida appealed to us because of the taxes. But having moved here, it's such a pleasant place. It's such a beautiful place. I don't know why everybody doesn't live here. I'm glad they don't, but it's absolutely, absolutely wonderful to be here. But just as wonderful is the fact that we are so lucky to live in the United States of America. There are so many people who like to badmouth our country and talk about how we're the root of all evil. But have you noticed there are a lot of people trying to get in here and not a lot of people trying to escape? It tells you that there's something really cool about it. And it still is the land of dreams. And have you ever noticed that there is such a thing as an American dream? There's not a Portuguese dream or a Swedish dream. There's only an American dream. And there's something incredibly special about our nation and about the values that made us into a great nation. And that's why I'm in no hurry to give those things away for the sake of political correctness. And I hate that. And I see such dangerous trending in our country. You've heard all the stories this week about, the students at the University of Missouri, Vanderbilt, Yale, trying to shut down people who disagree with them. It seems like we're not teaching civics anymore in our schools. People need to know that there is such a thing as the United States Constitution and that there is a Bill of Rights and that there is freedom of speech and freedom of expression in our country. And we really must begin to emphasize that. In terms of the American dream, for me, it was medicine. There was nothing else that appealed to me more than medicine. I skipped right over policemen and firemen. I went straight to doctor. I loved anything that had to do with medicine. I even liked going to the doctor's office. And I would gladly sacrifice a shot just so I could smell the alcohol swab. It was just great. Anything to do with it was so just cool with me. But, there were some problems early on, no question about it. Poverty after my parents were divorced. And, my mother was such an incredible person. She didn't have much in the way of education and had a very difficult life. But she had common sense. And that seems to be something that many people who have a great deal of education don't have, particularly in our government, And she would do everything that she could to really create a situation of comfort for us. She would go to the Goodwill and buy a pair of pants with a big hole in the knee, back before that was fashionable. And then she would get patches and put them on their knees, and people would say, "Oh, where did you get those pants?" And then we'd go late at night on a Saturday night to Haymarket Square, and just before it closed, and the farmers, they would almost give stuff away. And you could get stuff and bring it home and can it. And she just knew how to stretch a dollar. And I truly feel that even with her lack of education, if she were the Secretary of Treasury, we would not be in a deficit situation right now. But I was a terrible student. I really didn't think that I was very smart. So I was the one sitting in the back of the classroom cracking jokes and shooting paper wads, and everybody called me the dummy. But my mother was the only one who really believed in me. And she was always saying, Benjamin, you're much too smart to be bringing home grades like this. I brought them home anyway, but she was always saying that, and she was being encouraging and telling you what you could do. And, she prayed and she asked God, what could she do to get her sons to understand the importance of intellectual development? And the good thing about God, you don't have to have a PhD to talk to him. You just have to have faith, And so she prayed for wisdom, and God gave her the wisdom, at least in her opinion. My brother and I didn't think it was all that wise. I mean, turning off the TV, what kind of wisdom is that? As far as we were concerned, that was child abuse. And then to add insult to injury, we had to read 2 books apiece from the Detroit Public Library every week and submit to her written book reports, which she couldn't read, but we didn't know that. And she would put little check marks and highlights and underlines. And, I was not at all happy about this. And her friends would say, you can't make boys stay in the house reading books. They'll grow up and they'll hate you. And I would overhear them and I would say, Mother, they're right. But it didn't matter, We still had to do it. But, one of the things that I really disliked when I was growing up was poverty. Some people hate rats, roaches, snakes, but I hated poverty. That is, until I started reading those books. And I started reading about people of great accomplishment in all kinds of different fields. And it became apparent to me after a while that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. It's not somebody else. And that to me was highly liberating. And I didn't mind being poor because I realized that that was a situation that I could change and that it only need be temporary. And if something is temporary, then you can tolerate it quite easily than if you think that it's going to be a permanent situation for you. And, I started learning all kinds of things. I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class in a year and a half. The same kids who were calling me stupid were now saying, Benny, how do you work this problem? And I would say, sit at my feet, youngster, while I instruct. I was perhaps a little obnoxious, but it sure felt good to say that to those turkeys. But, when you stop and think about the human brain and what we're really capable of, and you also stop and think about this nation and education, because education is the great divide. And it doesn't matter what your ethnic background, what your financial background is. If you get a good education, you write your own ticket. And this is something that we have to begin to emphasize again. Because we have let the victimizers come in and make people think that they are a victim, that somebody is keeping them down. And, the main thing that keeps a person down is their way of thinking. Now, this is not to say that some people don't start further behind the 8 ball than others do. But, you have to go out into the world. I've visited 57 countries, not 57 states. And, look at the way so many billions of people in the world live. And you very quickly come to realize that in our country, there are abundant opportunities for people who are willing to really buckle down and recognize that maybe they do have to work a little bit harder in order to achieve that dream. But we need to work hard on that. I hear people all the time saying, Carson must have grown up very poor, so he must have had government assistance, and now he wants to remove all the government safety nets. Well, that's just a bunch of crap that the left wing puts out there to try to make me seem like a bad guy so that a lot of poor people won't listen to what I'm saying. That's not what I want to do at all. What I want to do is create ladders of opportunity that allow people to climb up from a state of dependency and become part of the successful fabric of this country. That's what we need to do. And we also need to reorient ourselves in terms of who is responsible to provide that ladder. You know, the government started thinking that it was responsible. It really kind of started with Woodrow Wilson, and it kind of culminated with Lyndon Johnson, his Great Society programs and the war on poverty. Well, how did that work out? You know, $19 trillion later, we have 10 times more people on food stamps, more people in poverty, welfare, broken homes, out of wedlock births, crime, incarceration. Everything is not only worse, it's much worse. Because it's not the government's responsibility. It's our responsibility to take care of people. Now, many people in the government read our Constitution the wrong way. When they look at the preamble and it says, promote the general welfare, they think that means put everybody on general welfare. That's not what it means at all. It means we need to treat everybody the same and create the right kind of atmosphere for people to succeed. And you know, my whole professional career was spent looking out for the welfare of children and trying to give them longevity and quality of life. And now you look at what's going on and you realize that they're not going to have quality of life unless we make a change in what's going on in this country right now. You know, if I were in charge of America and I was trying to destroy it, you know what I would do? I would try to drive wedges between all of the people. I would have a war on women, racial wars, income wars, age wars, religious wars. I would have Democrats hating Republicans, Republicans hating Democrats. I would create every wedge that I could possibly do, recognizing that a house divided against itself. And then the next thing I would do is I would try to destabilize the country financially. I would drive the debt to such unsustainable levels that it would threaten to collapse us. I would invite people in from other countries and give them all kinds of benefits. I would be telling the people in this country, you need to get on food stamps and every kind of benefit you can get on. I would be giving people free phones. I would be telling people that they could go to college for free. I mean, I would be doing all of this stuff. And then I would try to destroy the military. You know, I would have the smallest Navy since 1917, the smallest Air Force since 1940. I would encourage a sequester to cut the heart out of the personnel, telling majors and lieutenant colonels and captains, you don't need to reapply, we don't need you anymore. And I would have a meddling of all the internal affairs so that the generals would get discouraged and they would retire prematurely, and I would tell the veterans how much I love them, but I would do nothing to support them, and 22 of them would be committing suicide every day, and I wouldn't do anything about our infrastructure. I would let the electric grid just continue to deteriorate, knowing that it puts us in great jeopardy, and I would take us out of the space race, knowing that all these inventions came out of the space program and that in the future, he who controls space controls the earth. That's what I would do if I were trying to destroy. Now, any semblance to what's going on now is purely coincidental, I'm sure. And but you know, it tells you, it gives you a very good idea of what it is that we're up against. And what is it going to require in order to fix this? There's a lot of things that we can do to immediately begin to turn things around, but the election next year is going to be absolutely critical. Because if we don't win that election, and we get another progressive in there, and they get 2 or 3 Supreme Court picks, we are toast as a nation. So we cannot let that happen. And the reason I bring that up is because I want everybody in here to realize that you have a role to play in making sure that that doesn't happen. You see, in 2012, 93 million Americans who could have voted didn't vote. 25 to 30 million evangelicals didn't vote. They sat on their hands. All of us know some of those people. We have to convince them that when they don't vote, they are voting. But they are voting the wrong way. And it's critical that we get them educated on what the factors are and abolish this stuff that, well, yeah, I agree with them on 90% of stuff, but this one thing, I just can't vote in. I'll just vote for Hillary, or I'll just stay home, or what. You know, that is fatal thinking. We just cannot be thinking that way this time around. You know, not everybody agrees 100% on everything. And I always say if 2 people agree about everything, one of them isn't necessary. So, you know, we need to advance to a level where we can really begin to look more at the big picture and, you know, recognize that what we're going to have to do is get rid of all these unnecessary regulations in order to get our economy rolling again. You know, when I say unnecessary regulations, I'm talking about cost-benefit ratio. We need to examine every single one of these regulations in terms of their cost versus benefit, and if they don't meet the test, we need to get rid of them. It's as simple as that. And like Obamacare, that has the employer mandate in it. Now, what is the effect of that? It used to be when you started a new business, you were so proud and you called your mom and you said, "Mom, I started a new business. I got 10 employees." And the next year you had 20, the next year you had 30, and then 40. Now you go, "Oop, I better stop. I don't want to hit 50. I don't want that employer mandate to kick in." You know, we are destroying the fundamental backbone of growth in America with these policies. And then look at all the debt that we have accumulated in the last 8 or 9 years. We've doubled the national debt. Well, that constrains the Fed and central banking policies. And they can't raise the interest rates. Well, that's one of the things that they can't do. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, Joe the butcher used to go to the bank and put 5% of his savings in a savings account every week. And after 30 years, he had a nice nest egg and he could retire. That's not happening anymore. And the banks are not encouraged to loan money to small businessmen anymore to get their businesses started. These are the kinds of policies that are killing us. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton will tell you that it's because of the rich. It is not because of the rich, it's because of these asinine policies that are not allowing our economy to expand. So please, everybody here, use your sphere of influence to get people involved. Make sure that everybody is registered, that they will come out, that they will vote. And remember this, it was Thomas Jefferson who said that we would reach this stage. He said the people would be non-vigilant, and as a result, the government would grow, expand, and dominate. He said, but just before we turned into something else, the people of America would awaken and they would recognize what's going on. And I say now is the time for us to rise up and take America back to where it should be. Thank you.